welcome back to the Brand Checkup. I am Chantel S. Ladybug Brumfield, also known as the Nonprofit Brand Doctor, here at the S2B Brand Hospital, where we specialize in helping nonprofits breathe life back into their organizations in the area of attention, compliance, and engagement, really to drive impact. We do these brand checkups every Friday as a way to really engage our community. Many of you out there are either just starting your nonprofit, you're really in the beginning stages of where you're going to be able to stabilize some of the things you're doing, or you're in a place where you're ready to scale. Either way, you're in the right place. During these discussions, we go through really the 12 essential steps needed to really successfully sustain your nonprofit over the course of 12 months. And this month's focus is really helping to put your organization in the best position to receive funding. When we're talking to nonprofit leaders and nonprofit organizations, whether it be their board or their staff members, one thing always pops up, and it's always centered around funding in most cases. And so we want to discuss what it really takes to really put your organization in that position where you could really achieve your desired outcomes within that year and really get yourself to a place where you have unrestricted funds in reserve. So, by the end of this conversation, you should really be in the position where you're able to define a budget, design a solid fundraising strategy, deliberate on the benefits of a financial institution, decide how long you need to maintain a relationship, deploy a fundraising strategy and approach, and then debrief with key decision makers regarding your eligibility. Okay, so let's dive in. So, first, being a budget. Many of you know that I'm a nonprofit leader, and in order to really be in a space where people are listening to you, and in my space, I really needed to put together not only my program, but also my program budget. So, when thinking about budget, many people get caught up in this space of operations only. You should have both an operations budget and a program budget, really a program budget for every single program you're running. Why do you want to do that? Because you want to show that you're looking to sustain what you're doing. And it shouldn't be really based on what you can bring in for operations, because that should be a well-oiled machine. So when looking at your budget, this budget really determines 90% of where you're able to find your funding. 90% of your funding is coming from your budget and your ability to show where you're spending that money. So every dollar should fall in a specific category of a financial class, right? Because it's going to be important to do it in that way, because understanding the different levels of your budget will also let you know who your audience is that you should be reaching out to, right? And then you want to think about how much you want to raise and how quickly. So if you know your program budget is 200,000 for the year, you're not going to get that tomorrow and with one person, right? So having an idea of how you're going to break that down into creative ways to get funding, where you're doing a mix of donors, whether they're just anchor donors, and then ultimately your apex donor. Your apex donors are those who are like really in the position to really give you more than $10,000 in one sitting. Ultimately, maybe they're starting out anywhere from 40,000 to 2 million. But we also know that that's not going to happen overnight. So if you want to do this successfully, you want to think about first how much you need to make to run one program and figure out how much you need and how soon. So if you haven't done that already, now is a great time for you to do that. We're in June. It's the timing where, you know, the next couple of months are really should be you and your organization preparing for the giving season, which starts in August, at the end of August, beginning of September, and will carry you through the end of the year. So this is the hot time. This is a hot time for you to be able to raise those funds. And so thinking about those things of how much you want to raise and how quickly will determine the last remaining portion, that last 10% of where your funding will come from. So then when you have that complete, you want to design a solid fundraising strategy. So again, understanding the different levels of, you know, funding classes that you're going after will help you determine who you should be reaching out to. So you will need a specific contact plan in that instance, right? So you have to have a listing of people who are in the position to give you 1,000 or more. And you will also have a listing of people who are just going to give you a few bucks, right? And a few bucks meaning anywhere from 10 to 100 in one sitting, where you can just call them and say, hey, we're looking for support. Can you support one of our kids? To do so, give us $100 and that will support them through this program. The example I gave is really connected to my own program. It costs $15,000 to just run one program, and that's for 20 students. And so looking at how much that costs, I'm looking for $300 per student. If you're not in a position to do that, how close can you help us get there? Because our goal is to make sure that we can do this program in excellent, and these kids are able to go through and really get what they need out of it, because we're driving impact. And you as an organization must be able to talk as smoothly as that. And the only way you get there is understanding your budget, who you're speaking to, and where they're in position to really come in and support. So when looking at the different categories, I mentioned a few seconds ago, you have anchor donors and apex donors. There is another category. The first category is really associate donors. We see them all the time. Those are those attention campaigns. So remember, we're looking at attention, compliance, and engagement. The attention campaign are just folks who are online. What do you have to give them? You have to give them a good story. You have to show them and tell them what you're doing, because they may know nothing about your organization. So you spend time providing value in the things that you post, so you can show that your mission statement and your cause actually aligns with the projects and programs that you're running. So when looking at compliance, those are people who are probably a few degrees of separation from you. These are people that are connected to your board members. These are people who may know you from the community. These are people who may just actually at one point was an associate donor and decided to give more than a few times, and now they're on this journey with you. And then you get to that point where you're in the engagement economy, where those are really those large donors and supporters who are coming in from corporate space. Corporate matching comes in, family offices are at that level. And you want to think about all of those things based on how you're going to communicate to them, because what you would say online will be very different from what you would say to a family office. Okay. So then, depending on, again, how fast and how large your budgetary needs are, will really determine the mix that you need. And so those are the things you want to think about as you're planning this strategy. How often do you need to post to create this attention? I would tell you, you would at least need to do so every day for 90 days if you want social media to work for you, right? Your job again there is to show and tell what you're doing. Compliance, those are phone calls. Those are private, luncheons where you can show people what you're doing and ask that they bring their checkbooks with them, because you need money and you need it that day probably. All right. Same thing with, when looking at engagement, you need actual pitch deck. Get yourself a pitch deck and be able to professionally present what you're doing, where the money is going, and why you need it, and how it's driving impact, and how important it is for that organization, corporation, to get involved in what you're doing. So then you want to deliberate on the benefits of the financial institution. You cannot use your personal account to do this, especially if you're going to a group and you're asking them more than $10,000 that day. It is not a good look for you to put in your personal account. So have a banking institution that's on your side that you can utilize, really to house your money and show that you're doing ethical work, right? Secondarily, you also want to really think about what organization you go in. It's not just about, just having a banking relationship, but it's about being able to know how long you want to have this relationship for, and what's going to be the most effective plan, right? Where you could build a relationship with the banker that's there. Banking institutions also have their own community funds, especially for nonprofits, that are available if you're doing projects that align with things that they care about. And so when thinking about that, you want to, you want to have this pitch in order for them too. They're considered an engagement group, and they're part of your engagement economy. So you want to have a strong mission, a strong cause, and you want to have a pitch deck that goes along with what you're doing, so they can see, because if just in case they're not in a, position to maybe give you funding at that time, they have a whole network of financial institutions that they have relationships with who may be. And you want to put your organization in the best position to take advantage of that. Okay. Then you must decide how long you need to maintain the relationship. Is this a relationship that you are going to have long term for your organization in general? Because again, you should have multiple relationships with multiple banking institutions. The suggestion is to go after one of the top five, Bank of America and JP Morgan and Chase, you know, um, Wells Fargo, Citibank. Those are the institutions that are everywhere proximity wise, right? So you wouldn't have to worry so much about it being restricted by proximity. Also, in addition to having one of those banks, you will also want to have a relationship with your local credit union. Again, local credit unions are definitely about support and community impact and initiative. So having a relationship there will just put your organization in a really great place for association's sake. All right. And so then you want to look at and understand the fact that while we're talking about banking institutions, we also want to talk about funding and foundation institutions as well, because both sides have their own rules and regulations. In most cases, when dealing with foundations, they're going to give you restricted funds. Why? Because those restricted funds are really connected to a program. If you're going after, funding from like an anchor donor or associate donors, those are really unrestricted funds that you can use whatever way you want, whether you need them from operations or for actual programmatic need. Right. And so you want to also just think about both and have in your mind that while you're planning how you're going to communicate with people and design this strategy and understand what type of relationships you need, you want to think about the full scope, because that's going to help your organization really have the type of diversified funding coming in that you require. So then just quickly thinking about some of the banks, I know I mentioned some before, but the top 8 banks that are really structured for nonprofits are going to be Trust Bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, US Bank, PNC, Blue Vine, and TIAA Bank. Those are the ones you want to look for various reasons. Because once you have that kind of taken care of, then you want to be able to really deploy your funding strategy and approach. Right? So you've already have everything kind of lined up. Now you must test what you have done. So once you have made a decision on what you're doing and how you're doing it, just move forward and move forward with boldness. Don't get complacent in your space because maybe you're posting something if you're doing an attention campaign and it's not really turning the way you want it to. Remember, I told you it takes 90 days to even get there. And really, quite honestly, I know a lot of people believe that posting something on Facebook is going to get them a lot further than actually picking up the phone and calling folks. You should be spending your time in your compliance economy and your engagement economy. Really having a strong contact plan where you can be able to contact people who are in best position, really based on, again, their financial class of understanding what they can give you. Will get a lot further doing that. And once you get a few people kind of going, then you have things to post online that you have the support of people who know, like, and trust your organization and are able to be in a position where they can show and really be that stamp of approval that may be needed on the side of attention, because they don't know your organization. They don't know you. They're not on this journey with you, but they may see something then where, wow, this is a great story. And look at all of these organizations and people who are already supporting. So then when understanding the financial institution, if you've already gone through and began to build your relationship, you show them your pitch deck, you let them know what you're doing, and your goal is to really just keep them informed with what's happening. You're building a relationship, and so make sure you stay in communication. Try to go in the bank as often as you can. I know it's very simple to do online things now, and it makes it very simple, even if you want to pick up your phone and do a deposit, but you're there for the relationship. This is a business you're running and you need that type of support. So lastly, when you continue on those relationships, whether they're donors, supporters, they're your volunteers, they're, your board members, or ultimately these corporate partnerships and, these relationships that you have built with your engagement economy, you can get in a space that after 90 days, you want to be sure to go back and sit down with the key decision makers and tell them, hey, the program I was telling you about, well, these are our results. And we're going to be doing it again. And I know we asked you before, you weren't really in a position to help out, but we're hoping that this time maybe you can, because we want to extend our impact in this program. You think they're not going to support you? They absolutely can. They absolutely will. And even on a just personal tip, I'll let you know that I found out that credit unions have that community pot of funding personally, because I was same thing, just having a regular conversation, being my zealous personality self and just telling how grateful and how excited I am about programs. And the banker turns to me and say, hey, I'll be right back, and comes back with a $5,000 check to support the program. And I'm telling you, you would be able to do the same. And, when looking at statistics, there are over 85% organizations last year of nonprofits of corporations that gave money to nonprofits. And so what does that mean by number wise? That means $20 billion was given to nonprofits last year, or even available to give to nonprofits, which most of their money that it was actually more available had to go in reserves, because the corporations, they were having difficulties finding organizations to give funding to. So keep that in mind as you're building out your board members. If they work for large based corporations, ask them about their corporate partnerships and their matching programs at their organizations, because that may be the funding that you're looking for. Okay. And lastly, you want to be clear, consistent, and you want to maintain a commitment to showing this is what you're doing. Because when you do that, you are building a strong relationship. And I want you to remember this quote, that without commitment, there is no guarantee. So commit to what you're doing, understand how much you need for your programs, build out that budget, and you will be in the best position to receive funding for your organization. So if you have any questions that you would like to pose to myself, my team, our entire Brand Hospital, I invite you to visit thebrandhospital.com and set up some time with us. It's a free consultation, and we can go through things that are on your personal journey. Maybe you have questions. Maybe you're looking for help. Maybe you're looking for a referral for professional services that can help your nonprofit in one of the three key areas of attention economy, compliance economy, or even engagement economy, and we can help you do so. And if you are enjoying these check-ins that we do every Friday and would love to have your own personalized check-in every month, I invite you to join the Epic Brand Checkup for your organization, where you get one-on-one time. You get our key themes of every month, and we get to go through the 6 steps, 6 tasks that you're meant to go through for that month, that by the end of the 12 months that we have an opportunity to work together, your organization will be in the position to really secure $10,000 more in funding, and also put you in a space where you have successfully put your organization in the position to sustain in your 3 markets of attention, compliance, and engagement. I am Chantel S. Ladybug Brumfield, also known as a nonprofit brand doctor, checking out, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.